Hmm. Oh, it seems so silly now. Just an
Oh,
idea.
don't underestimate it. It's very powerful stuff. You know, that fear of existence, that fear of survival. It's a survival thing. Yeah. It's
Yes.
so primitive. It's so fundamental to everything. Yeah.
Yeah, very primal.
And so it's what, in a way, it's symbolic of a suicide. But of
Yes.
course, it's not really bringing about a death. It's a realizing that there was nothing ever existing there. So that's the difference. You're not killing something that exists. You're just recognizing that it never did exist. But still, the fear of it disappearing is very real.
Yeah.
But it's based on what? You just saw what it's based on. It's based on a fiction, eh? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a thought bubble.
Yeah. So, of course, this becomes now the next experiment. The next time you find yourself absorbed in the, the the beauty of what is, in that sunlight or in that breeze or in that whatever it is, the experiment will be to recognize when labeling happens and the purpose of that labeling. And of course, the moment you recognize it, it will stop. And you will become the breeze and the sun warmth and whatever. Yeah.
I didn't even catch it. You caught it. I didn't even catch it then because I was like, oh, what a nice experience. And I
Yeah.
was quite happy with my experience, but yeah.
Yeah, see, so, well, it also brings us to another really interesting point, and that is that it's kind of easy to see the value of suffering.
Hmm.
So you can see but when you have such nice, pleasant things, you think, oh, well, this is it, you know. You forget that there's lessons in that too. There's discoveries to be made in that about our motivation and what we do when we do it. Mm.
Thank
So
you, Vince.
I was going to say, Michael, is this earlier time better suited for you?
No, it's okay for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a little vacation. I just came back a few hours ago.
All right. I'm just saying you turned up about 40 minutes early.
I did? What?
Yeah.
Here now?
Yes. Yeah. So we weren't really starting it for another 40 minutes.
You just emailed saying that it started already.
Oh, I did. That's right. Yeah, I did. I was ahead of myself there. Yeah. So anyway, that's fine. Well, here we are. I just wondered why you got here early. That's yeah.
Okay. Oh, so did I come in the middle of a private thing?
Whatever turns up is not. It's, you know, what's private. I don't know about that. Yeah.
Okay.
And shaking her head. Yeah.
I miscalculated the daylight saving time, and I also turned up accidentally an hour earlier, and then we just started chatting.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's serendipity. See, and I'm here because I was to meet with somebody for a one-to-one, a private one before the meeting at 9 o'clock. So then they cancelled. But when it got to 8 o'clock, I was a bit confused. I wasn't sure whether I was meant to be here or not. So I thought, well, I'll come in here and do a bit of work while I'm waiting if I'm not meant to be. So, and as it turned out, Shaheen turned up and then you turned up. So it's all, who does this kind of thing? It's the universe, isn't it? It's
Well, I turned up because I saw an email.
Yeah.
I would join.
I sent the email when instead of saying now, I should have said in an hour, but I said
no,
now.
but the now works, because if you say in an hour, I would usually just forget about it.
Okay.
But then you say now, it works.
Yeah, I'm terrible with that list. I keep forgetting to send it out, and then all of a sudden I'm going, well, I better get it out because I'm going to start one now. Yeah.
Yeah, I have reminders for everything. I put a reminder in my calendar if I need to do anything.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get to put a reminder and then I usually don't do anything.
Yeah. Or sometimes I forget to look at my calendar and see the reminder that's there.
Yeah, that can be changed. I've been reading Angelo's book recently. I forget what it's called. Angela Delilah's. I think it's Awake, something about Awake.
Yeah.
Have you read it?
Bits of it. Yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, he's a good bloke. Yeah, I like his message.
Yeah. So I've been experimenting with the technique that he recommends, but that is good for all. Well, the biggest thing that I got from the book is that he really talks a lot about how important it is to kind of get to the end of the journey. That once you kind of got into this whole thing, that you have to reach the end, the liberation, because he also says that the later stages of realization it's kind of a strange thing, because it sometimes can seem that there is even more suffering than there was before.
Mm-hmm.
But it registers suffering because, like, there is no concept of suffering. It's like, and that's a little bit of what I had been experiencing for a period, that there is sort of like on one side there is no real suffering, because nothing is really suffering. It's just sensations, it's just concepts. But at the same time, there is, if you look at it from the outside, or if you kind of like really that I'm not thriving, in terms of things. And so I've after reading the book, I started exploring that, and that brought a lot of things up that I was not aware of. Like, there's a lot of conditioning that sort of started coming up, and I was working with that, and then there is this and now it feels a lot nicer. But it's like this this cycles of conditioning that that come and go. But what really got to me in the book is that that I didn't quite realize that until I really kind of looked at it. And so it's like, oh, there is quite a bit of things that I'm sort of not addressing, that I wasn't quite aware that they were present. I sort of thought that, okay, this is just how it is. Yeah, but So there's that. So he really talks about how important it is to get to that end of that journey, and there is a technique that he recommends that I've been experimenting with for a few days. It's just looking at the fields at the essential fields one by one. Like, you only focus on what you hear.
Okay.
And you only focus on what you sense, and at first I was like, well, that's kind of similar to what I was doing, but then I realized it's a little bit different. And what it does is that usually what we have is things are kind of intermingled, and so thoughts are intermingled with sensations, with feelings, with emotions, and so on. But then you separate them. Yeah, it really allows you to to kind of deal with things more effectively.
Mm, mm.
So it's quite interesting. Well, have you been doing something similar, Vince?
No, I haven't. Although I have been playing a bit with what actually happens when we just try to separate the stories and sensations. And I've come to the realization that really the concept of separating them, of uncoupling them, is a bit misleading, because it implies a kind of a doing of something, but that what actually happens to the consequence of chasing the focus onto the sensation, to have it get closer and closer and closer to the sensation, means that the stories just drop off automatically. They're just ignored for the moment, right? But that there's a point where when we can kind of see when the sensation is fairly pure, the stories will hover and want to come back and attach, and they'll be seen for what they are at that point. So that same kind of principle that you're talking about, the ability to look at one thing at a time, so to speak, that
Yeah.
really decouples all those intermingling things that we use to confuse things. They were doing a good job of confusing things so that we didn't know, and then we just called them feelings. We labeled them and called them feelings as a way of coping with them to make it easier.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like all the methods are more or less the same, just minor variations, right? Because after all, what else you're gonna do? You're gonna look at stories, you're gonna look at sensations, work with emotions. Like there is not that much else to do. It's just like slight variations, but yeah, it's similar for me. Well, what I've noticed, though, there is a slight variation. It's like what I was doing before is similar to what you described, but the way when I started experimenting with what Angelo describes is it was slightly more effective in some situations, because I noticed that in some situations, like I have some sort of, I don't really have a lot of stories, but I often have some sort of like an emotion or some sort of conditioning hidden. And then I was often just sitting and feeling the sensations, but that takes a longer time. So when I started looking, instead of just looking at sensations, I started looking at emotions and thoughts separately. It's actually kind of hard to do, but sometimes I'm able to do it. And then they fall away like very quickly, like in seconds, in minutes. Whereas otherwise it might take hours, or if I'm just sitting with sensations. It's like, if I'm able to put the attention on the right thing, it kind of falls. Yeah.
I don't know if it's relevant for this kind of thing, but the examination, the seeing of it, the shining of the light of investigation onto it, means that usually that the structure it's got no cohesion. It can't stay together. It just evaporates, falls apart, because it's constructed on a falsehood. It's constructed on a concept that we made up that was just purely convenient, and we were taught to do it, and it worked, and that concept enabled us to feel good about things. That was what it was all about, feeling good.
Yeah, feeling good or protection. I can
well, it's probably more protection when when we're operating more at a more survival level, like so under certain circumstances, it would be pure survival. Protection, if it's an ego that's trying to survive, if it's the self is, I see the self as a like a chainmail armor that we wear in order to protect what we imagine is a threat to the ego. We don't, so we've got to maintain a reputation. We've got to maintain how we appear to other people. It's got to be something that we approve of. So if that's threatened, then the self will respond in a defensive way.
Yeah.
Now that's survival.
Well, I'm talking specifically about more traumatic conditioning. So the main things that I have coming up these days, if they do, is more related to, it's like there is a number of issues that just keep coming that I've had like all my life since childhood, and then just like keep coming, and I keep working with them. And there was before awakening, I was working with that for different tools, and then after, and then now, and still they come up, but now it's different. Before I was just like way before, it was just like absolutely overwhelming. I couldn't do anything. It would come up, and it's like, that's it, I just have to run away, or like I couldn't do anything.
Flight or fright or flight or fight.
Pretty much, yeah, and now it's there is no actual emotion, there is no story, but something really strong. It's like a visceral sense of it's the same kind of fight or flight mechanism, but it's just the sense of it, and so I can sit with it, I can see it, I can observe it, I can use some tools. But it's interesting that it's just like the same things that keep coming and keep coming, and it's like there is layers. So so like I worked with this layer, but then at some point, I guess the next layer will come up when it's ready.
Yeah, when you work through one layer, the next one will be there waiting for you. Yeah,
and it's like endless amount of layers. And
well, yes and no. It might seem like endless layers, but no, you'll generally reach a point where it'll just drop away. Maybe not 100%, but like it'll just be a ghost in the background, rather than have it not demand any attention. It's still something that shaped you, regardless of anything else. It's part of your evolution.
Well, for me, one of the big things is like noise, like sort of like loud noise, people talking loudly. And I don't actually remember exactly like what caused it. I have some ideas, but all my life it was like a really big issue for me. So if there is like just people talking really loudly next to me, would kind of send me into like this fight or flight mode. Like I had to escape. I felt really threatened. Like
Yep.
And I had that, and I've had that throughout my life, and that that made social life a bit difficult. But like this week it was interesting because I was just in my hotel room, and there was a few people talking loudly next to, like outside the room, and the feeling of it, and loudly to me, but they were just speaking normal voice. But the feeling of it, to me, the way it felt is like they are just about to come in and start, chopping me up and killing me like immediately. Like it was such a feeling of such intense fear. So I was just sitting with it and kind of observing, and it took a few hours and so on. And then the next day it was again, and then it's again a couple hours, and then it sort of when it was done. But I worked with it so many times, hundreds of hours, maybe thousands of hours over the past few decades, using so many different tools, and it sort of keeps coming back. It's like we have a number of, it's like, I don't know, it's like we each have a number of conditioning patterns that just that we just like level up and
Yeah,
then, you know, the next level comes up and we walk through it, and then the next level. Is it something like that for you too?
mm. Yeah, there's that constant arising of stuff from deeper levels all the time. That's I can't imagine. When you were talking about Angela, it sounded like he was talking about an end, and I kind of can't get my mind around an end.
Well,
Yeah.
to me, when I think about, I mean, he describes it in the book. The way he describes it is pretty similar to just being beyond the fetters. The description is that all these mechanisms,
Yeah.
the mechanism of resistance, they no longer
Yeah.
come up. So
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So it's different. It's different. But I think you'll find Angelo himself is working on stuff beyond the fetters. Yeah. He's having
yeah, but the way I see it is just that my kind of, I don't know if that's correct, but my personal sort of sense of it is that the flow is no longer broken. Like what I experienced like this week, then I had this thing come up, and just in general, is I experienced that kind of the flow of life is sort of broken. There is a contraction, there is some thoughts coming up, there is things, there is like that sort of that sense of just being in the flow of life is interrupted. And I experience that from time to time. And so the way I understand it is upon liberation, it's no longer interrupted.
Okay. No, that
But I don't know.
that sounds like a good story to me. Yeah.
Who knows? I'm not there yet. We'll see. But I've got sort of motivated to start some regular meditations and other practices again. So
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
But do it really lightly. Do it. Yeah, there's absolutely no amount of work you do is going to get you anywhere. Right? Tell you, believe me, that work is just going to get in the road. The only way you're going to get the only way you're going to get where you want to go is by playing.
That reminded me of a funny story when I kind of started getting seriously into meditation, because I have a tendency to kind of do things really, aggressively. So I was like, I'm gonna be the hardest meditation.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like,
Yes,
to put so much effort into it.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
But yeah, there
You
is.
know, and when you were saying, I you didn't pick up on the fact that I couldn't even keep a straight face, but you were talking about how there is this interruption to life. I mean, that's not quite what you said, but you remember what you're saying about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like interruptions in the flow. That's my experience.
Yeah.
I can't.
But isn't it all life? How can you interrupt everything?
It's a contraction. I experience it as a contraction in the body. Like generally, I feel sort of, there is a presence, there is a flow, one thing after another, and then.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but isn't that part of life? Isn't that what you're experiencing?
It's a good question. Is it?
See, you're going to get to
It's
the
sort
point.
of. I mean, the truth is, I know what you're saying, but it's sort of like yes and no, because
Okay.
from one degree, it's all flow, right? But at the same time,
what did you say that word? But. And as soon as you say, you said da-da, da-da, it's all fine, but. And as soon as you say the word but, I know you're up in your head telling a story. You're using logic, you're reasoning.
Yeah, but it's not a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
But it's not a bad thing.
Well, to me, there is like two kinds of logic, right? Like there is a kind of conceptual thing, then you are in your head, you are in a story, but then there is the practicality of it, just seeing what comes up and making decisions based on what is. You can still, you know, use your reason, you can still use your mind, you can still project things.
Absolutely, they are tools. But do you let your hammer tell you what to do?
But it's not about telling what to do, it's just about observing.
It is, because you're letting these tools, your thinking, tell you what to do.
I know what you mean, but it's not exactly that. It's well, I mean, it's sort of both. Because what you are talking about is the conceptual sort of nature of things when you act out of concepts, out of the mind, out of understanding, out of thinking. And what I'm talking about is just the practicality of things. It's like I still makes, you know, I still have, for example, I have some investments, so I still look at it and I make decisions, and I need to use the mind for this, right? Like I have to look at things and I have to use the mind. And it's, you know, it's sort of important because
And that's an appropriate tool, isn't it, for that purpose?
But it's still kind of right. So the mind is good at that.
Okay,
And,
so then a better analogy might be, why are you using your hammer to stir the soup?
I'm lost in that now. but what were we talking about? Where does that apply specifically?
You look like you got it, Shaheen. Did what I was saying? Tell Michael.
Yeah, it clarified something for me. It clarified something for me. I love this analogy. Why am I using the hammer to stir the spoon? Because my whole so I had another question, belief, obstruction, veil that was blocking, which was, is the mind and the fact that we have thoughts and the ability to self-reflect and also create the idea of self a flaw in the system? And I just realized it's not a flaw, it's a hammer. But we end up stirring the soup with the hammer, and that's where the suffering comes from. I'm speaking really abstractly, but okay, let me say this in a more raw form, and see if I'm getting it correctly. The fact that you can self-reflect, the fact that you have a mind that can look at a stock portfolio, do calculations, basically helps you survive. If you were a hunter-gatherer, it helped you survive, to have that sense of self and other, and hunt, protect yourself, bring back food for your tribe or your family. For that, you need a sense of self. All animals have it. Probably with humans, because it is so sophisticated, that we then start applying it to everything and solidifying it. And that solidification is where the suffering starts.
Okay, that's not quite what I was aiming at.
Okay.
Partly it was, yeah. No, really, I was saying the mind is a tool, and it's a very good tool if you're using it to make a decision about stocks, or if you're creating a shopping list, or there's a whole lot of things that the mind is really good for. What the mind is not good for is stirring the soup. What the mind is not good for is directing you to make decisions when it has no, it's inappropriate for you to be using the mind to make those kind of decisions.
Well,
It's the
regarding
wrong tool for that job. For that job, you use your awareness, you use your ability to see what's going on in the body. That's where, and those decisions will then make themselves. You don't ever make a decision. Those decisions will just happen. They'll appear like you're making them, but you will be relaxed enough to allow all of the conditions around it to decide. You know, so it's not an emotional decision.
well, I think when it comes to the idea of liberation, I think both thinking that you haven't attained it or that you have attained it are both beliefs, and
Yeah.
both thinking that, you know, that it's somewhere in the distance or that it's only in the moment, they're both beliefs.
Well, then what about the other one? Here's how I feel about it, and I reckon it's available to you and to everybody, you know, really, and that is, there's nothing to attain. There's no it. You know, you're not going anywhere. You're never going to get a certificate for anything. There is no, you know, you can say, oh, I've worked through all of the fetters, or I've worked through half of the fetters. That's no different to saying, well, I've read the first couple of chapters of the Bible. You know, everybody is, we can only use the analogy of a path. We're on a path, but there is no destination. It's all about the journey.
Yeah.
And we can't get off the path once we're on it. We can appear to get off it. We can go slow, we can go fast, but not because of anything we do. You know, so the whole thing is really about just watching these feet move one after the other along this path. And when we get sick of watching the feet move, we'll watch the scenery, and it's fucking amazing, the scenery. It's just brilliant. But that's about the most we can actually do. Whether we end up anywhere or not, well, I can't imagine it ending up anywhere. I reckon when I'm dying and I'm fading out, I'll be still going, is this it? Is this it?
Well, I mostly agree, but I think that can also be a subtle form of belief. It can all be a subtle form of fixation. It's
Sure.
also a kind of like a subtle form of story. But like in general, yeah, there is nothing to attain, nowhere to go, but it's like the fact that there is no one to get anywhere doesn't mean that it's not happening. It doesn't mean that,
Of course.
that I'm not sort of progressing, or that, you know, to some, you know, from whatever perspective you look at. It doesn't mean that I'm not, you know, able to attain something, or that it might exist or might not exist. So
if we just go one level deeper, you know, we're saying, you know, that there is nothing to attain, that but yet at the same time, we've got this thing that says life is improving. The further along this path I go, the better life gets, or something like that. One of those, there's something, and it's definitely there, isn't it? We can't deny that it's there. Otherwise we wouldn't be doing it.
yeah.
Okay. So we say there's nothing to attain, yet I've still got to behave like I'm attaining something, because I don't know how to walk along the path without the idea that I'm traveling. I'm moving forward. What's forward? What's moving? There's something going on, you know. So I've got, it's a paradox, or it's a contradiction, that the idea that I've got nowhere to get, yet I've got to do getting.
Yeah, well, to me, it's more about fixation. I don't see a contradiction. It's like, yeah, I'm it's like, yeah, you know, pleasure can be better than pain. I would rather have cake than a broken finger, right? Like, yeah, there is preferences. Yeah, I would rather have less pain, but it doesn't mean that I'm like, you know, totally fixated on that and like that is absolutely my goal. But at the same way, it does predetermine some of my behavior. It does condition my behavior. It does mean I'm going to meditate more.
Of course.
And before I didn't meditate as much. So it's like previously I would have set a goal, I would have written it down, I would have broken it into all kinds of sub goals.
Set the alarm. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it would have been a whole, you know, it would have been a whole conceptual thing. Now that doesn't happen, but it doesn't mean that I cannot still have this kind of goal-oriented behavior. So
Sure,
it's still.
absolutely. And look,
Yeah.
if you have it, you have it. You
Yeah.
know, who can decide what behavior they're going to do? You know, who can decide what thoughts are going to come up or what triggers are going to happen for you? We don't decide any of this stuff. They just happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just happens. Yet at the same time, it's like we don't decide it, but it still happens. So we can still continue the process. We can still read books. We can still decide to do some more meditation or use some other tools, even if there is
Be careful here, though.
no one doing it.
Careful again about using the hammer to stir the soup. You know, like some of these other tools, they come pretending to be aids for you on the path, but in reality, they're diversions off the path. They're ways of avoiding what you're looking for. So I'm not saying anything bad about anything. All of those things, doing meditation and doing yoga, doing whatever, any of those things, they're all good stuff if they're done with the right attitude. And if you're doing them thinking that there's some purpose in it, then you're locked into Feta 3. You're locked into the rites and rituals, right? So if you're doing it as an opportunity to discover something, great. That sounds good to me. So what we're talking about here, what we're aiming to do with all of the fetters, with all of the work that we're doing, is we're aiming to break identification, right? So that we are no longer shackled, right? Hence the term liberation. We're no longer shackled to some story we've got about how we should be, right? Freedom, when we're no longer shackled to that story. But that story is a sneaky bastard of a thing, you know, because we go, oh, look, I've seen through the idea of self, you know, I can see that that's rubbish. And you think, you know, aren't I great? And guess what? As soon as you go, aren't I great? You're right back into the very thing that you think you were congratulating yourself about, right? So no matter how far through the fetters you come, you'll discover remnants of Feta 1 still hanging around. All right, now maybe Angelo is at a point where he doesn't see any more remnants of that because he's through all of the fetters. But I do. I see remnants of that pop up from time to time.
What about Kevin, Christian?
Yeah.
Brunel, do you think they see remnants of Feta 1? Todd?
Kevin probably yes, but I don't know. I mean, when I read a little bit of Christiana, and she seems pretty adamant that she doesn't anymore. But I don't know.
Did you watch the recent talks at POK? It was actually quite interesting.
No, I haven't seen any of the POK stuff.
They both did a talk, I think, this year, different times. I remember at Kevin's last talk was interesting. He said that now, more than 10 years after he completed the feathers, he actually now started working with the therapist, the EMDR.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. There you go.
Interesting that.
Yeah.
Now,
well,
like,
all the feathers out of the road and something coming up. Yeah.
But the way I understand it is it is just a flow of things. Like it's just the flow. It's just part of the flow. So for him, it doesn't seem like that interrupts the flow. It's just something that comes up and he does it, and there's no resistance.
No, you see, the thing is, nothing interrupts the flow. It only seems like it's an interruption because of a story you've got. The moment you don't have any stories, nothing can interrupt the flow. Because what you call an interruption to the flow is just part of the flow. Okay, it's just a boulder for the water to go around.
But that's, how do you know that's not a belief? How do you know what you're saying right now? It's not
You don't. No. How do you know anything's not a belief? You don't. Until you
You-
don't believe it anymore, then you know it was a belief. But you don't know it's a belief while it is a belief. You only know it was a belief when it's no longer a belief.
Yeah, you know it once you get rid of it. That's right. Once it's gone. Once
You know,
see.
as a kid, I had this experience that I still remember. You know, wow, this is like almost 70 years later. I remember this experience, and that was because I used to read a lot. I read books, and I used to read with a torch under the covers of a night, and I'd read until 3 a.m. and then I'd go, I've got to stop reading and go to sleep because I've got to get up for school, you know. So I'd go to sleep, and then my mother would have to wake me up. It would be always an ordeal every morning for her to wake me up and to get me out of bed to go to school. And I remember I went through this ordeal where she woke me up and told me to get up and yelled at me a couple of times to get up. And I kept having trouble getting up, but I eventually got up and got dressed. And I was just walking out of the bedroom door to go and get breakfast when I woke up. It was a dream, but it was so realistic, I tell you. And when I woke up and realized that that was a dream, my reaction was, oh, bugger, I've got to go through that whole thing again, right? And then years later, I realized that, you know, what's going on now, I don't know whether that's a dream or not. I will only ever know if it's a dream if I wake up from it. And, you know, back in 2011, I did wake up from a dream. But I'm not out of a dream. I'm not awake. I'm just in a different dream.
But so both Christian and Kevin said that kind of once you are past the fetters, you know that there is a big shift, and there is like you kind of know that you are done with it. And that more or less everybody I've heard who spoke about it said that. Was it like that for you? Was it your experience with people you worked with, people you've seen as well? Or do you feel there is no completion? There is nothing that gives you a sense of completion?
Well, a sense of completion. I know what you mean, and I know what that feeling is like. But
The Buddha himself said it.
A made up feeling. Okay, so there is no completion to get a sense of completion. So when I have a sense of completion, what I've got is I've got a certain sensation, which I might call satisfaction, or dissatisfaction, along with the story that something is finished, something is done, right? But because I can see that that's the structure of this sense of completion, it kills it. It doesn't exist.
Not
See, I can't see that what Kevin's going through is not a continuation. Sure, it's in the flow. That's right. He's not, I imagine, he's not generating any resistance to whatever is happening. So consequently, you could describe him as in the flow with what's going on. But because he doesn't create any resistance, he has good opportunity to investigate, to examine what's going on.
Yeah.
But can you just imagine that what he's done, that this stuff is coming up, because before the fetters, he was keeping it well hidden from himself. Right?
Yeah.
After the fetters, there's nothing to hold it down anymore. So the more stuff we work through, the more filters we remove, the more stuff comes up. But it does slow down. So look, Adyashanti went through this, he's going through the same thing, has been through the same thing. Different thing. It's not a therapist as such. He got treated for depression after the fetters, so to speak. It's cellular stuff. It's stuff that we became conditioned with at a pre-verbal level. Whether it was pre-verbal before we were old enough to have language to label things with, or whether it was just dropped out of our memory altogether for some reason after that. That can happen for a variety of reasons, but either way, it's stuff that you might say it's cellular memory. Muscle memory's a little bit gross, but that could cover it too. It's stuff the body is holding on to. Now, what happens when that's all worked through? Who knows? Who knows?
But you think
they'll know before me.
There is a point where you no longer have resistance. There is a point where resistance stops.
Yeah,
Stops coming up.
and it's not even that. It's not even that straightforward, because let's say we get more skillful at being non-resistant, so we can say, it's not something we do. So the first thing I can say is, all right, I'm not going to resist. I'm going to go along with everything else. But when we resist, it's not under our control. If resistance happens, resistance happens. And if resistance doesn't happen, it's not even an issue. Non-resistance doesn't exist.
Well, I don't know yet. I haven't gotten to that point of what they describe by being beyond the fetters, but a lot of the people I've spoken to, a lot of the books that I've read on this, like Karen in her talk also, she mentioned that she had a point there, things sort of like it felt like things aligned, like the inner and outer sort of aligned. Like there was a kind of, they all describe it slightly differently, but the idea is it's not like the end of everything. It's just the point where more or less, suffering stops or resistance stops. So people call it a completion, kind of liberation.
Mm-hmm.
So that seemed reasonable to me, and that seemed like a reasonable kind of thing that might exist, but who knows?
Yeah. So when the idea of suffering stopping is really an interesting one. And again, it seems to me to be really, really obvious, but the same shit can happen, and it can be suffering, or it can be not suffering. Now not suffering is again, it's not a thing. There's no such thing as not suffering. There is such a thing as suffering, but there's no such thing as not suffering.
Well, do you like, it's been 12 years since your awakening, right? So do you still have things that come up and just sort of and you find yourself kind of lost or resisting, or I don't know, in some, like, stuck in some kind of negative?
Yep, I know what you mean. I got
things like that.
Yeah. Certainly stuff comes up that I could say once upon a time that would have caused suffering. Now it doesn't cause suffering. How do I define suffering? That's a little bit tricky. So if I find myself feeling a sense of panic, right? I had a moment earlier today where I suddenly thought that it was Sunday and that I'd missed tonight's meeting altogether. And with that, accompanied was a momentary sense of panic, you know, a sense of, oh, what have I done? What have I done? You know, like heightened emotion. Once I would have beaten myself up with that, and therefore I would have called it suffering. Right? The panic itself I wouldn't call suffering, because there was an immediate recognition of what was going on, of what I was doing to myself with that. Because obviously, if I did miss it, if it was really Sunday, it's too late to do anything about it. There'll be consequences from it, but I can't fix the situation. So even if it was the worst case scenario, there's not going to be suffering. There's going to be almost immediate acceptance of the situation. And then the next thing is, well, what do we do about it?
And what happened when you had that? Did it dissolve immediately? Did it stay for a bit?
Then my wife told me it was still Saturday, so it was fine.
Oh, so you just it just like went because the reason for it sort of disappeared basically.
Yeah, because it was a misunderstanding on my part. Yeah, I'm probably getting a bit of dementia. I don't know if that's true or not, but I certainly had that confusion for a moment. Yeah, yeah. But so I would say, and I don't like to say it because it sounds so egotistical. And why would I be worried about that if I wasn't being a bit egotistical? and so therefore doing a bit of selfing. See, there it comes up. You just got to catch it when it happens. But I would say, no, I don't suffer anymore. Now, what would have been suffering, what suffering is really sensation plus stories again. And the stories are usually pretty negative, pretty horrible stories when it comes to suffering. And they're usually stories that start with should, or have should in them. It should have been different. It shouldn't have happened. We should do it this way. That's usually what suffering is. That suffering component of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I still have
It
those,
is
but
sensation, and the sensation is a direct link to the selfing. So not the stories about suffering. So the fact that happened, and I could say, no, I didn't do any suffering. But what I can see is that pointed to stuff for me, right? The fact that I had a little bit of a panic about the fact that I thought I'd missed the meeting was a direct connection to some of the Feta 1 stuff that was still there. And I can see that. I could see that at the time. I can see it now. Right? That was me saying, well, I'm an idiot. You know, what are people going to think of me? I mean, these stories didn't get repeated, so to speak. They didn't get a roll on, but there was a flavor of them still there that caused me to get into that panic when I thought I'd missed the meeting. You see what I mean? Everything is an opportunity.
well, maybe that was suffering, but you're just not registering it. How would you know that?
Well, I'm not registering it as pain, and I guess suffering has a pain component. But yeah, no, I'm registering it as an opportunity. See, so it's and I don't know that I'll ever get to the point where those won't happen. Maybe they will. Yeah.
Did you find liberation through semantics?
No.
I'm sorry, I'm just being a little bit hard on you, but I'm really curious to explore.
You're allowed to be. You be hard as you like. Yeah. No, and I wasn't being semantic about that. I was trying to point to that everything that we say, every word that we say, there are nuances beneath it. There are. The more we look at it, the less solid it becomes. And so as soon as we look at suffering, you know, it falls into its component parts, and the component part that would have created the pain for me wasn't there, which is the story about how it shouldn't have happened, or what an idiot I am, or whatever, you know.
Well, so let me give you an example. So yesterday I went out for lunch, and I'm usually particular about what I eat. I'm trying to eat healthy and all that stuff. And so I went out, and it was really hard to find healthy food in that place I was staying. And I was quite upset, and I was like really kind of upset about it. Like, why don't they have any kind of healthy food? I went to 7-Eleven, I went to the local market, I went to a couple restaurants. They all just had the same kind of meals. There is no fresh fruits, no fresh vegetables, no kind of salads, nothing like that. So it was kind of a little bit annoying. So I ended up buying something. I went back home, and then I sort of sat and kind of meditated on that. But I would call that suffering, because
Yes,
it,
yes,
it,
exactly. It
there
was suffering.
was a bit of a resistance to that.
Yes. So what was it? What was the story you said? Why don't they have good food? Why
Yeah,
don't
so
they have fresh food?
sorry,
That was your suffering story.
but it was I did not have the story at that time. I only realized that there was a story later when I came back home and I sat down
Yes.
and decided to do some inquiry on it.
Yep.
So
And stories
so
can
then
be
I
like
looked at
that.
it, and then and then I felt it and I worked with it, and it sort of dissolved more. And then at the end it was like, well, of course that's that's what the local people want who live here. Like, of course that's the food they would serve, because there are no other health freaks like me in that area,
Yep.
in the rural Thailand area.
So, so, so did
So
the
it's kind of obvious.
did the thought occur to you to skip lunch altogether and to fast? No.
I was pretty hungry at the time.
Yeah. So your only thought
I
was
do that
about
sometimes. Yeah,
finding some
I do
food.
that
Yeah.
sometimes. Sure.
And I'm pointing that out just that because you were suffering, your focus was narrow.
Yeah.
And when there's no longer suffering, your focus will widen out, your perspective will get bigger, and more options will be encompassed.
Yeah, so after I worked with it, after the whole story dissolved, and it was like, oh, of course, that's so obvious. Then I immediately knew, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to go and buy some fruits and vegetables up front.
Yep.
So I have them with me. I need to plan, like that's obvious. But at the moment, it didn't occur to me. So that took kind of sitting with it and dissolving it. So that's what seems to be like. So you don't have this kind of thing. So for you, that doesn't happen anymore.
What kind of thing?
And would you call that suffering, what I've described? Yeah,
Oh,
and is it
sounded
thing
like you
that
were
you don't
suffering.
have it
Yeah.
more, or you have something like that still too?
No. I'm imagining a scenario, of course, but based on experience. If I couldn't find anything to eat there that was what I was looking for, like you, I would probably just simply not eat.
No, but I mean, we all have different conditioning. Like, this is my
Yeah, of course.
condition.
Yeah.
Mine has a lot to do.
I guess, okay, so your question points to really the attitude, and the attitude would be that I would accept that I'm not going to find what I would like. I would accept that easily.
Right.
Like if I open the fridge and what I'm looking for is not in there, I don't go back and open the fridge 5 more times to make sure. I remember that it wasn't there the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, most of the time it's like that for me, but then occasionally things pop up. So things certainly still pop up, and then I have some things to work with still, so I work through them. But it dissolves pretty quickly. So I set it for an hour right after, and then it was gone.
Yeah.
And
I just wanted to mention to you, although I probably don't need to, but it's a good idea, is that when you recognize what's happening, it really doesn't matter how long after it happens. I mean, there is some kind of wonderful ideal that you will recognize it before it actually happens, that it was about to happen. But if you recognize it the next day, that's fine. That's still a movement in the right direction. As long as you celebrate that recognition, that's the whole thing.
well, yeah, but to me, that's kind of how I can see that that things are improving somehow. There is some sort of progress.
Because they're
Previously, it
happening
would take
faster.
a lot. But yeah, Yeah, and also that is that is the day that there is suffering. So I still want to reduce the amount of suffering. So the faster I can recognize it, the less suffering.
All right, let's say this. You can't reduce the amount of suffering. It's either there or it's not. You will suffer or you won't. You can't half suffer.
Yeah.
Suffering can happen less frequently, you certainly.
Yeah, the time, maybe not the amount, the time.
Or the
Yeah.
intensity of it. Yeah. So none of that's under our control. That's the point. The whole point is about recognizing what's going on. And once it's amazing. Once you recognize what's going on, it changes. But if you set out to change it, you're fucked. You can't go anywhere. Nothing's going to happen. You're going to make it stronger, probably make it worse. But if you just watch, just wait and watch, it'll change. It'll change. How are you, David? Are we making any sense to you?
Hello. Yeah, makes sense. I think again we are in this desire and rejection and preferences to me, because I think the majority of my experience, it's about it's that the mind is preoccupied about this kind of stuff, about food, body, clothes, looking, comfort, and preferences. So it's true that suffering, it's very difficult to really give a definition, I would say, for me. But what I can say, it's I don't suffer. I don't feel suffering anymore, because for me, suffering was this kind of desperation of not finding a way out of my pain, of my emotional pain. This is for me what I was suffering. Now I know there is one always, even if I don't see it. So I can say I don't suffer anymore, but I have a lot of emotion and struggle and everything. That's for sure. But there is not this suffering per se. And I am in Thailand also, so I know what Michael is talking about, the food and everything. So yeah, it's we are in Chiang Mai, but now with my family. But now I have 2 days in Chiang Rai.
Chiang Rai. Yes.
Yeah.
I spent a month in Chiang Mai.
Yeah.
And went to Chiang Rai. But back in 1979, I was there for a month. Wow.
Nice.
And you know what? My memory of Thailand was I just loved the street food. I ate off the street every single day for the whole time I was there. Loved it. Yeah.
So lucky. Yeah, very good. I would love to do that, but it's true that now my digestive system is kind of fragile. I mean, it's not compatible. Let's say not fragile. It's just not really compatible with the food here. So
I love my chili. Yeah.
Oh no! I can't eat chili. If I eat too much chili, I can become enlightened maybe. There's nothing left in me.
Anyway.
There will be nothing left in me.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, but to talk about preferences and yeah.
So do you see?
Yes, no, I can really connect to what you are talking about.
Great. So do you
David,
see desire?
I also in Chiang Mai.
Go on.
Sorry.
I live in Chiang Mai. Let's meet
you're
sometime.
in Chiang Mai. We can meet.
I live about 40 minutes away from town. Have a farm, out of Chiang Mai.
Okay.
Are you gonna be in town for a while, or you're already living?
Yeah, I will stay two more weeks, 2.5 weeks in Chiang Mai, so we can organize something.
Cool, cool.
With
That's
pleasure. That'd be nice.
Let's exchange contacts and maybe we meet.
Yeah, can Vince send me your contact or something like this?
Well, you
Or
could you
how?
could exchange emails or phone numbers in the chat.
In the chat, yeah. Okay. Oh, what do I do?
I'll add my email here.
Okay. Sorry for the digression.
No worries. It's serendipity again. You might be absolutely amazed at what comes out of it.
Yeah, I shared my email. Yeah, I'd love the opportunity. I've only met one other person in person from, all these awakening communities that I'm in, all the different things. There's only one other person that I've met in person. So I kind of love the opportunity to meet people, because it's a sort of, remote area. Very few people, most people are based in the States and Europe.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what's the chance that here tonight, two people from the same town turn up like this? Huh? Yeah, that's amazing. And I remember back from my seeking days, and I was really absorbed in reading or listening to the audiobooks of Jed McKenna, the trilogy that he wrote. Anyway, and one of those, I forget which one now, he said, when two, I think he probably used the word enlightenment. When two enlightened people meet on a park bench, what's going to happen? Absolutely nothing. They're just going to sit beside each other. They have nothing to say. So it'll be interesting to see how much you guys have to say to each other when you get together. Good on you. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's true that for me also, in this process, I'm kind of a lone wolf. I mean, I'm aware that no one do the process alone. I have always help, and like now, Vince and a lot of help. But mainly, I am in no specific group. So it's true that it's always a pleasure to meet someone else that is living this process, and it's nice.
Yeah.
So, David, how long have you been living this way?
I would say I had I seek for like 9 years, mainly using the Course in Miracles and doing prenatal therapy and trauma therapy.
Yep.
I did a burnout of I was doing so much that I just burned myself.
Yeah, sure.
And after this, like maybe 4 years now, after I just collapsed, after my mind collapsed and my emotions just come up, and I went into depression and a lot of stuff happened. Like I had like 1 year or 2 years of kind of get back in, kind of make sense of what was happening. So now I would say 2 years I'm kind of deepening, and it's becoming really enjoyable. Let's say.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. So would you say you're still seeking?
No.
Okay. So how long since you stopped seeking?
Like 4 years.
4 years. Yeah.
4 years.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Excellent.
Sinking? What do you mean by sinking?
Seeking.
Oh, seeking. I heard sink. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when seeking stop, thinking begins. Something
Yeah.
like this, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, well put. I like that. Yeah.
Maybe thinking does not end.
Yeah, there's no end to sinking, I don't think. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Yeah.
That reminds me of the old German joke, Have you heard that one? I was thinking that there's a US ship is coming close to a German what is it called, the thing that they have at sea,
Lighthouse.
yeah, to a German lighthouse, and the ship says, "Mayday, mayday, we are sinking, mayday, mayday, we need help." And the German guy says, "Hello, what are you thinking about?" For me lately, it's all sort of going through the body. Like there was a period that it was a lot in the mind, then there was a period it was a lot in the emotions, and now it's sort of all in the body. Like I notice kind of the reactions in the body first often, and then from that, like I might notice, oh, there's a contraction in my head, or there's like something somewhere, and then from that I'm like, oh, then maybe there is some sort of belief or some sort of story somewhere, and then I kind of like go and maybe start looking and find something, and it sort of just happens automatically. But it's interesting that it's like, the states, there was the mind phase, the emotion phase, the body phase.
So what's next?
The way I like to put it, it's like for me, because I feel I have the same path as you, Mikhail, and for a long time I thought I was like in stairs, like I was progressing somewhere. But now I feel more that it's more like I like to put it in like growing in sensitivity. Like the more sensitive I am, the more I can feel my experience and everything that is inside at the same time. So I can feel thought, I can feel perception, I can feel emotion, I can feel my body, and in the body I can feel even more this, more deep, more see more. So I like this way of it's because it's more inclusive. Like even if it's true that there is step, but the step is not like you leave one to enter another. It's just like it's like my awareness grow, and it can absorb more, it can see more. But it's true that what you say, I think it is reflected in the 10 feather, in the way they're explaining them. Because I think this is the way back somehow.
Yeah, that sensitivity is, at first it was a bit scary because suddenly I started to be aware of my heartbeat like all the time, and then I could like feel the food going down my stomach, and kind of like the blood flowing occasionally and so on. I was like, what's going on? it took time to kind of get used to that. Okay, that's normal. Nothing is wrong. And, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's something happening.
I've started. I think that every 3 months or 6 months, I feel that I stop everything I'm doing and I start over again like a beginner. That's how that's what I feel my path is. So now I've stopped everything I was doing, and my only practice or intention it's I want to feel my sensations, the sensation of my body throughout the day. Like since I open my eyes to I go to sleep, I want to feel my body. And it's so hard. It's like I spend hours forgetting it. Like, oh yeah, right. I have a body. I have sensation. Where are they? Oh, here they are. And it's like I'm not used to. So, but it's very enjoyable. It's very enjoyable to do this. But I feel like a beginner. I always feel like a beginner. In anything I do, it's new, and I feel that I'm just beginning. You know, like okay, I'm just beginning, feeling my body. Okay, well, let's do this. You know, why not? Yeah.
But really, it's true. You know, everything you do, you're doing for the first time. It's an original. Everything you do is an original.
Mm.
Everything is a beginning. But of course, beginning implies a middle and an end, and that doesn't. That's not necessary, is it?
No, but I think it's as sensitivity grows, there is apparently new stuff happening in the body,
Yes.
or in the mind, or in the. So yeah, it's new. It's a beginning of something. So I think it's appropriate, even if metaphysically it's not accurate. But you know, I like what is functional. You know, what can be used to really apply in direct experience to 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 feel more this piece.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when I'm guiding people, I use there's a I suppose you call it a technique that I use that might be useful for you, and that is
Tell
that
me.
when you realize that you've been lost in thought, that you weren't thinking about, you weren't aware of the sensations in the body, that moment of recognition, when you realize that you weren't aware of it, that you haven't been, that's a moment. That's a moment when a trigger has happened. Something has happened to bring that to your consciousness at that time. It might be something you've seen. It could be something you've heard. It could be, who knows, whatever's triggered that particular thought to come back that says, I haven't been aware of my body. That moment of recognition, if you celebrate it with a laugh out loud, laugh to yourself, smile, whatever. If you celebrate the moment of recognition, you will develop a trigger for it to happen quicker and quicker and quicker. And yeah,
I don't do this. It's true that I don't celebrate. I will try to celebrate more. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good way. It's just Pavlov dog training, really, but it works really well. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have
Thank
to
you.
do it for a few weeks, and you'll see the difference. Anyway, it's just a thought, just a possible technique. I wonder about the issue. The issue isn't that you imagine that you're going to be one day able to do that all day from waking up to going to sleep. You never will, because you think. That's the nature of thought, and it'll suck you in for sure. But the issue is how lightly you hold that. You know, it's a great thing to do. Go ahead, you know, but keep it light. Don't take it seriously.
No, I mean, it's not really like, yeah, I get what you say. For me, the purpose of this practice is to be able that when I feel something uncomfortable, like emotion or sensation, to stay there, to really. Now when I hurt myself, when I kick something with my feet, for example, I try to go in the pain. I'm
Yep.
like seeking the pain. What it is, I want to feel it. You know, like
Yeah.
So this is for kind of train myself to stop running away of feelings,
Yeah,
of
excellent.
sensation. So this is my main objective. But yeah, but it's true that I have to be careful that it doesn't become like
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know how to say it, but like
I get you. I know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah.
And
But it's so difficult because when there is pain, I see the first reaction, it's going away.
yeah, of course.
It's just
of
like
course.
going away. Whatever it is, small or big, I go away.
Yep.
First, this is it's so natural. It's so biologically, it's like this. I feel it's like just
Yeah. Yeah. You can go a lot further. You don't need, maybe it's appropriate, maybe not at this moment, but anyway, you can go as far as to say that anything that pops into your mind, any thoughts you have, and any action that you take is a diversion away from what's going on. You can go to that extreme as a training exercise. So that running away that you're talking about, we all do it all the time. Every time we react to something, we're moving away from something else. So that sensation is where to bring the focus back to what's going on. Yeah. And it gets even trickier too when you get to the point where it's not just suffering, but even good stuff, good, wonderful feelings, good feelings that doing the same job. They're diverting you away from what's going on. It's pretty extreme what I'm talking about, but it's something you can cogitate.
well. I don't think it is extreme because what now I feel that reality or God, it is seducing me. You know, it's like every day feeling God. You know, feeling my being, feeling presence. It's more enjoyable than other stuff. You know, and more and the more I become sensitive, the more it's pleasurable to be within my own presence, and the distraction is distraction. So somehow it's uncomfortable. So it's kind of the opposite, but it's not extreme. But of course, if when I'm extremely identified with this suffering part of me, of course it become extreme because you want to take away my only joy in my life, but but it's not really like this. I know what you mean. Yeah. I think it's really nice to feel that reality, it's really searching us. And I think in the West we have a scientific culture that is very cold, that is perceive the universe like it's just a rock, you know, just space somewhere, it doesn't do anything, it's just there, it's not alive, you know. But now I feel more and more that reality is alive, and it's seeking us, and it's calling us, and it's like, come here, look, it tastes good, it feels good, and everything is fine. It's kind of, it's calling us, and it's very nice to feel that the universe that I thought it was just doing nothing, it's vibrant, it's alive, and it's calling us, and it's very nice to feel, and it's a nice way to think about also.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And wait till you discover that you are it.
Yeah.
How are you, Rowena?
Morning, Vince.
Hi.
Good, thank you. Yeah, I was what you were just saying when I came on. I was sort of busy this morning, and I was saying, oh, it's the meeting. And I was sitting there, I was just finishing off some things, and I could feel the Theta 4, the energy coming in. I was noticing it, saying, oh, okay, you know, that's there, but, you know, it was like, do I need to identify it, or should I just finish what I'm doing and seeing how things go? And it was just, yeah, it was fun.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was, you
hardest
know,
thing is
that's on the wanting and knowing, oh, well, you know, I just identifying there is a me here who can just make that happen and fulfill that want, and at the same time knowing exactly the paradox at the same time that, yeah, maybe or maybe not, because something else might happen, and then it's not going to be possible, and just sort of being in that play, which is
Yep.
Yeah, I suppose it's sort of like a type of gap, but it wasn't a gap exactly in what you would normally describe how you work with the fourth theta, but it was all clear.
Yep. And well, what I want to hear is what was the attitude? What was the feeling, the tone, if you like, of all of that happening? Was there a relaxed acceptance of just whatever's maybe not kind of thing, or was there something else?
Well, initially, when I was completing a task, it was a sort of a contracted energy initially, but I was very sensitive to saying, oh, okay, and thoughts about the meeting. Oh yeah, there was identification, getting this over. And so then I just sat with that while I was clearing up and moving around. And then a different feeling came of sort of like enjoyment in watching what had been seen.
Yes.
And seeing the game that was being played.
Yep. And that's the moment for celebration, that moment.
Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah. And it's so hard to see it and not get sucked into wanting to do something to fix it, to just see it and relax and watch it and have a smile at the fact that you're seeing it and that it's, I'm onto you, pal. I can see what's going on.
Thanks, Vince. Yeah. Yeah, there's been another little sort of hack in the thinking side of things, which, you know, sometimes can get a little bit disturbed because of sort of busy tasks. And I just said, oh, that's just my internal Tourette syndrome. You know, it was like I love it. It was like, I love it. It's like, because who knows, maybe that is a manifestation. You know, I don't really know anything very much about that sort of mental issue, but it's probably just, it is probably like that, except that there isn't a filter. So it's just coming out verbally instead of staying as thoughts. So I had to sort of chuckle about that. It's like, okay. And it was, it was somehow, I don't know, maybe not a very proper way of having a little bit less entanglement sometimes with thoughts, and because there's too much movement going on, and so the thoughts are there and there's not the time to step away. That I found that sort of, it just came into that thought arose, and yeah.
There's nothing wrong with how can I put it, postponing looking at something. Obviously, these things will come up in the midst of jobs that need doing, so to speak. The big thing is probably to remember to come back to it later on. Write it down even is a good thing to do.
Yes. Yeah. Otherwise, it's a bypass.
Yeah, yeah, it's just too easy
Yeah.
to avoid it, you
Yeah.
know. We allow the circumstances to, we blame them for the fact that we didn't get back to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's difficult when I have, in a way, the way I've always somehow used my body, except for in other ways, or that came in the way it was used, is that all action, somehow there's a lot of efforting that goes into it. And I guess because there's some sort of, there has been, since the beginning, some sort of resistance, but it's not completely been found. I mean, there's times when it's very fluid, but I know that there's still more digging to do. And so the resistance in the body and the efforting and the moving, even when there's exercising in the beginning and things, there's little voices saying, this is uncomfortable, or I don't feel like doing this, or it's sort of been it's just something curious of, there's such a desire just to get back to a state of stillness and peace and rest. And that's been there from, as long as I can really remember. Although I love to do, I love walking and hiking and things like that type of thing. It's like, I guess it's been there's always been an inclination to get either lost in doing things that are calmly and repetitive, but when there's things to do with efforting and then attention creeps in. So but it's not, that's something it's so subtle and non-verbal in a way that it will take its time to come, I guess.
and you need to appreciate, and maybe you already do, that thinking is a tool that does have uses.
Yeah.
And it's appropriate.
Yeah.
But even when we're using it in a useful way, sometimes stuff comes out of my mouth and I don't know why I say it. There's benefit in being aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
Even though it's a useful one, we still don't need to get lost in it just because it's useful.
Yeah. Yes, now having spoken it out loud in a way to the group, I can sense, that there's actually been a permanent sort of irritation, which is more the resistance. There's an irritation. But what it's, that I can feel that the energy is more of the resistance is somewhat of an irritation, but I'm not quite really sure what, that thread needs to.
Yes.
Maybe it's just energy that maybe I just need, maybe that can be vamped up,
So look at it. This is the thing to do. When you talk about it as resistance or irritation, irritation is descriptive, but resistance is really vague stuff.
Yeah, very vague. Yeah.
So looking at what it is, in actual fact, is the value, where the value of it is.
Yeah.
And everything, absolutely everything is trying to tell you something.
Yeah.
And sometimes, go on.
Sorry. No, carry.
And sometimes we don't actually ever need to know what that something is that it's trying to tell you. It's enough to know that it's trying to tell you something. Yeah. That's a good one, because there's the old the old mind is going to say, come on down this rabbit hole and we'll find out more about it. Well, that's just avoidance again.
Yeah. It's amazing how just speaking this out has opened something up. There's like a draining of that resistance and a loosening. It's like something that was wanting to be heard or expressed, and instead of shrugged off and pushed through. So
yeah, your face has changed. I'm not quite sure how, but yeah, you look a little different right now.
yeah, it's like a draining down.
I can see it also that your face have changed.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lightness, feeling, more laughter, more, yeah.
Absolutely amazing, isn't it? That just seeing these things is all it takes for them to change. Yeah.
Yeah, and somehow, and the sharing, you know, is so wonderful.
Yep. Well, we bring it out from its hidey place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. And I have no doubt that at the moment you can feel a solid foundation of love.
Totally. Totally.
Whatever that is.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. What Michael was talking about. No, not Michael, sorry, David.
Mm.
So I'm a very much of a, I suppose I call myself a connecting to the via negativa, because I spent quite a lot of time in the sort of spiritual domains, and then it switched, and so yeah, I'm not at all, I love these moments of the opening, but I'm not at all sort of concerned about having to then, something else is going to come up and having to dig down into, you know, embracing those, because it's so cathartic.
So I didn't quite get your message then. You're saying you're not concerned if it becomes cathartic?
No, I'm not feeling the love and having the openness it's the sun, the sun coming out and having this wonderful opening. But there's not a seeking for that to be there all the time.
Of course. Okay, great.
You know, it's
it's just now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just now. And then it's okay, what's next? And yeah.
Yeah, you could take the most wonderful feeling you could imagine and think, if it was present all the time, how long before it would change? It would be something different. It wouldn't be pleasant.
Well, and I feel that because this awakening journey is so ongoing, that once it was really seen, and there was this awakening which lasted not maybe about 3 weeks or so, time of complete, and then little by little, to a certain extent, that it becomes the new norm, and so it gets taken, and so that's where there's a possibility for doubt, because there's no longer this amazing, and so that's, or at least that's been my interpretation, and so it's like, oh, okay, this is the new norm, and the new norm then gets absorbed and rather taken for granted, even though it's certainly a lot different from the old, how it was before, because there's been so much letting go and relaxing. But then there's always these little yeah, little shifts. And it's cellular, it's biochemical or releasing of ways of
Yeah.
being that were pretty toxic or not
Yeah.
very
Yeah, can imagine even
helpful.
little cells having a little contraction and they just start to relax. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that's how I sort of imagine it.
And as soon as you're relaxed enough, something else will pop up.
Yeah. Last night, I woke up at about 4, and then I had to do some things, and then I went back to bed. And it's strange, but my stepfather, who died a couple of years ago, came into my mind. And I knew it was unfinished business because it wasn't, my father had died when I was 20. I was the oldest of 4 girls. And my mother remarried about 3 years later, but it wasn't a good marriage. And that was the way it was for the next 40 years or so. So I knew that there was still something there, but I hadn't really ever, bothered to think about it. And it was really interesting what came up, just with a picture of that person and what had been held. And this time it wasn't so much in the front, it was actually all mostly down the spine, the whole way down the spine, like a sort of and then just being with that and watching it probably for an hour or so, just move around. And then there was a huge sort of heaving and a big sort of like gasp and yawn, and I turned over on my side and fell asleep. It was just
Did it feel like it's finished?
pretty much. I might go, out of interest, I might just sort of bring it up and see if there's anything else.
Yeah, you'll see if there's any juice
Because the
there.
experience is that once it's really finished, you just can't even, it's
Yeah.
like there's
Nothing.
no imprint left. It's
No
like you
juice
can't
in.
find it.
Yeah. And every experience we have changes us. And so
Yeah.
certainly you can imagine how that experience can change you from the way you have been for such a large part of your life. Just letting go.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Brilliant. Yeah. You can see why they call it liberation.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think it's really great because at the beginning I thought that liberation was liberation from my human condition, right? From my human experience, from my perception, from my experience I have. And now so I was very nihilistic. I don't know how you say it in English, that I couldn't make decision. I don't wanted to change nothing in my life because it's not my life, stuff like this. And now I see that I'm searching a new spot, like you say, Rowena, when an imprint goes away, right? It's mental and physical. There is this opening, and in this opening, the old David kind of crumbles and changes. And at some point, it happened that I see, but because this David, it's really a thought and a contraction in the body, I can really make something else, But it's not. But now this is where it gets tricky because I see that when I say this, my mind goes directly to memory, and okay, so we'll use memory to build a new person somehow like this, you know. But no, but this doesn't work. It's like I want to stay in this space, in this sun, you know, in this light, and wait this light to kind of bring forth a new action or a new thought or a new person, and let myself be surprised about how this person will look. And now I see that I'm doing this well when I'm surprised. Because if I say, oh yes, I know this, I was in memory already. So it's very nice now, because I spent years in undoing a lot of stuff, and now I'm seeing, oh, I can undo at the same time. I can kind of not breathe, but let this light build something new, and this gives me a lot of hope, and hope in the sense, yeah, like it's nice. It's nice to feel that God don't take anything away from us. Just give always more. So it's very nice to feel that, and I think it's connected to what you are feeling. So I want to share it, because it reminds me this. And I don't know if this makes sense to you. But...
Oh yes, very much. Yeah. I don't really think about a new, like what's. I feel every time it's sort of there's this liberation that arises from an imprint dissolving. It's just like this more space to be, and whatever that being or experience, whatever it is, it's just to be more engaged with what arises, rather than perceiving. Of course, the perceptions in a way become fainter and fainter. There's just much more of an intimate engagement with what is.
Mm.
I love the Schrodinger's cat story. How we don't know, we can't know whether the cat is alive or dead until we open the box. And it's kind of like the box that Schrodinger's cat is in. Would that be Schrodinger's box too? I don't know. Anyway, the world is, that's what the world is. The world is Schrodinger's box, and we have got no idea what's going to come out until we open the lid. It can be anything, absolutely anything.
Mm.
But somehow I know that whatever is going to come out of it is going to be interesting, and maybe even exciting, but certainly interesting. That was a bit of a waffle, I think.
No, it really wasn't. It's the more the contracted energy dissolves, even the most sort of mundane moments, which have been repeated and repeated, can become fuller.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, like, hands can be looked at watching the dishes, and all of a sudden it's like, you know, where did this come from? This is really, really weird. This is strange, and this is curious. And then, yeah, it just becomes such an extraordinarily visceral, sensory experience.
Like David was saying earlier, everything's a beginning. Everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
And it's just,
It's so alive and fresh when it's like that, isn't it?
yeah.
I think one thing that about his freshness that is become very clear now. It's the paradoxical nature of reality. Like, reality is exactly what it is in the moment, at the same time, it's always new. So I know exactly what I feel now. At the same time, I have no idea what it is exactly also. So it's like, now that I'm finding more peace with this paradoxical stuff that I will never get it, but at the same time, I know exactly what I'm looking for. But
Yeah.
how it's possible, but this is how it is. It makes no sense, but it is that way. And this is very, very interesting.
Really.
To find out, like the cat, if you open the box, it's dead. But when you close the box, you don't know again if it's dead or alive. You have no idea again.
Mm.
It's like, I know, but I don't know. And it's a magic. It's true.
It is. It is.
No magic, more miraculous. It's more appropriate, maybe.
It's sort of like a gap, because you're teetering and it's sensational too, in a way. Knowing sort of like, I think that somehow that knowing and the slight engagement of mind one way and the other of the mystery, and to me it feels like a type of, or it can feel like a gap or like a type of point, and then letting go. I can't really explain it.
Yeah, this is a paradox, right? like for example, I am right here. Okay, I'm not in an airplane. I'm in a room. I'm not outside. I'm in a room. I'm here. It's obvious, right? I'm talking to you. I'm not. Okay, but now, if I want to be very precise about what when I say here, what I'm talking about really, and when I talk to people, where are those people really? And this is why it become like paradoxical and confusing, because I'm exactly here, and at the same time I cannot define here precisely. So that's why this is where you were. You were like, it's a point. It's clear a point. At the same time, it's moving. No, it's a point. No, but exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like quantum physics, the particle and the wave type of thing.
Yeah. But the point is a wave, even if it looks like a point.
Yeah.
But, so that's why no one is wrong, because every word we say, it's about reality, because there is only this. So yeah, it's very interesting.
So what you're saying, David, is really interesting, and it's a good point. I love it. And that is that when you say here, I am here, the moment you look at it, it falls apart. There is no here. You very quickly go, what do you mean here? It's not a place, what it becomes. Then you can maybe substitute the word this. There's just this. So it's not a place, it's not a time, it's not and even that word doesn't really work. So what it takes me to is that there is a whole world underneath the level of language. There's a whole world that exists below what we can express. We can't discuss it. We can't express it, certainly not accurately. We can kind of allude to it, but that's about as close as we might get. That world is down below language, is I really don't want to use the words direct experiencing, but that's probably a bit closer to what goes on down there in that world, So it's like there is a parallel world to the social world that we spend most of our life in. And I guess part of what we're doing here is we're starting to make that world more real. Forgive my words, but you know what I mean, I hope. Yeah. So that's the world where the blade of grass is absolutely fascinating. That's the world where the sound of the bird was enough to knock your head off your shoulders, you know. That's the world where we don't, because we're not, I just realized, because we are not trying to avoid it anymore. That's why it's so fucking wonderful. We're not running away from it anymore.
Yeah, but also because the layers dissolve, the layers of conceptuality.
Yes,
That's
well, that's part of the running away, isn't it?
But it's also that before awakening, we perceive things through our mind. We do not see the blade of grass. We see the image that is projected on our mind.
Yes.
That is described by the thoughts. We see the concept, and then as we become freer, we can see it directly. And as we move deeper, we can see it more and more and more directly. It's like our engagement with the world becomes more and more direct with less and less sort of filters.
But it's even just chasing that a little bit further. It's not like we're seeing an object, let's say the blade of grass. It's the movement, the discovery. It's the discovery of that thing via the visual input. That's that. So when I say discovery, that's like, can you get a flavor of that's a movement? That discovery is a it's there's nothing static there. It's a flow. Another horrible word. But
Energy.
you get the flavor of what I'm saying. It's not like you're seeing a thing. It's the act of seeing is where the discovery is. It's the act of seeing is where the excitement is, the wonderfulness of it all. Hello, Cleona.
Yeah, I remember I had a period that everything seemed very alive. The blade of grass, the wall, the cup, like everything. And then it's sort of the aliveness disappeared and nothing seemed alive.
Ah, okay.
And now it's sort of nicer. It's like the cat, the neighbor's cat who comes by. On one side, it's it's a cat, it's a living being, it's alive. But on the other side, it's it's just a kind of it's just it's like a device. It's a thing. It has this it has these behaviors. It behaves in a predictable way. It's part of, I don't know, the matrix. So it's sort of both and neither. It's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting, that one. Yeah.
Before, the cats used to be so fascinating, so mysterious. Like, what is it they're doing? Why are they meowing? What do they want? And now it's kind of clear. It's it's obvious. Well, it wants to be petted or it wants to feel safe or whatever. But at the same time, it still has that sort of mystery. There is still that fascination, and there is also that clarity. And there is also neither of that, and it's all just a kind of dream, and it's just the experience of that cannot be described.
I think there is like Rowena mentioned via negativa, right? Which is a lot of no, just I know this kind of path that I am not this, I'm not that. And somehow when we speak, we say that like there is a word and these are filters or kind of hiding reality. I think there is a movement that at first kind of, I have to remember, I have to be in touch with my being. So I am not my thoughts, I'm not I'm not my sensation, I'm not my perception, I'm not this, I'm not that. And I'm more in touch with my being. And after when I kind of have a taste of who I am, essentially, after the process go the opposite way. So it is like, I am my thought, I am my sensation, I am all my experience, even if it looks completely physical and dualistic. But I think we have to be careful to I have to be very careful to not negate part of my experience, but to impose a hierarchy on what I am experiencing. I would say that way better. You know, like if I'm thinking is worse that if I'm feeling my emotion, or if I feel my emotion is worse that if I'm feeling only sensing, and sensing is worse if I'm feeling only being, and being is worse if I'm feeling only God, and God is like doing this hierarchy at some point. I think truly liberation is to feel completely a human 1.0 and be at peace. And I think this is really interesting to feel that way.
That's the hardest message to get across to people. Whatever turns up is okay. It's all about how we respond to it. And that's going to be okay too, but that's where the work is.
Yeah. Yeah, to really see that the darkness is the most it's the darkness is the most beautiful expression of it is the most the it is the light expressing in its most freedom way. I don't know how to say it in English, but you know, like it's so free that it can express in darkness. So darkness is an expression of freedom, you know. And feeling this when I feel very bad is so amazing, because I can really feel my pain or my emotion in a so it's I can really, it's beautiful. And when I forget, it's something else. But when I feel this, it's so amazing. I see, oh, it's true. Like everything is an expression of light.
Yeah.
Like just that way. And the more dark it is, the more beautiful it is. Isn't it crazy? Isn't it just completely opposite, paradoxical, and make no sense?
So David, Michael wants to know why you don't call that suffering. Maybe.
What? Sorry, I missed that. Which part?
Were you listening to what David was saying?
Yeah, but I missed the part. I tuned down.
What he was saying basically was that the darkness is beautiful. He's expressing that whatever is there is just whatever is there. So he experiences no thing that he would call suffering.
Okay, but how do you, David, how that's not a belief?
How come it's not a belief? How come it's not a belief, David? What's not a belief? That he doesn't suffer, that it's not suffering?
That what you said, that the suffering is the darkness is the most beautiful part.
Well, that's his experience.
Maybe it's
I
just a belief.
presume that's what he's describing as his experience. Is that right, David? Is that what you experience, the beauty in darkness? Or is it a logical?
I would say, no. I would say this to be more practical, because I a little bit poetic because I like what it brings when I'm, but to be very practical, for example, when my son was about to born, 2 weeks before he was born, they find out a tumor in his stomach. Okay, so it was a huge panic. We don't know if he was going to live, and I mean it's a whole story. Okay, but this is kind of the taste where I was. And we had planned a whole birth in house, respectful and harmonious and everything. And suddenly we are in a hospital and they want to do cesarean and emergency, and it's completely shifted, right? It kind of shift completely. I never felt God so much present in my life that at this moment, ever. Because it was so difficult, so hard for me, you know, emotionally at all level and time and stress and everything was so difficult that I could only hold to God, right? So in this moment, it was very difficult, but I don't experience suffering.
Yeah.
I wasn't complaining. I wasn't judging. I wasn't saying why me, why my son, why not? Baby die, why not my son? You know, it's like it's just difficult. So I wasn't suffering that way.
So
And after, sorry,
I was going to say, could you describe what you're experiencing as a total acceptance of whatever was going to be?
I wouldn't say total acceptance because I was accepting my resistance and my projection on the situation. So in that way, yes, I was accepting it. So it was easier in that way. But I still have a lot of emotion coming up. So I wouldn't say it was totally acceptance. But what I want to add is after all of this, after have integrated the whole story, I can see the beauty in the story.
Ah, yes.
So this in the middle, I hold to God to go through darkness, let's say. And after I see, but there was light all the way. So in that sense, I say yes, it's my experience that even in the darkest moment, it's an expression of light. After it's just I am sensitive enough that I can see it in the moment, or I need years to perceive it or to integrate the story. Of course, now I'm talking about time, but it's to be practical, you know, to be more to express this point. So really, yeah, my experience is it's the darkness, in the difficult moment. There is so much light in there, so much.
Yeah.
And now I'm kind of start to think about the first time in my life I start to ask challenges. I start to ask, like, you know what, give me stuff. Try me. Do I really try me again? You know, let's see what's happening. And now I can finally understand when I read some mystical, some Christic mystical, and they were praying for challenges in life, you know, to really prove me, test me, you know. I mean, I'm not asking for a difficult life. What I'm trying to say, it's like in darkness, there is a lot of value in it. There is a lot of teaching in it, you know, and
absolutely, there can be a lot of teaching in it.
Yeah, and in fact, it's the only way to yeah, I mean, this is first for answering the question that if it's a thought or if it's an experience. And I'm telling you, in the darkest moment there is light, and there are light. They're expression of light. That's my experience.
Yep. So nothing you would describe as suffering.
No. I have no emotion. I mean, I have some emotion about the birth and everything, but I have no. It is no suffering in the sense that I'm not. Why this not happened to me? Why my son is like this now? Why this? Why that? No, it's just this is my life. This is what happened.
This is it. Yes.
So what? It has to happen. Someone has to live it. So why not me?
Yep.
Why should I throw it to someone else? No, it's happened to me. Here we go.
Let me ask you this: if we were to go back in time to that moment, or right after that, and then ask you, in that moment, ask you, "Are you suffering?" What would you have answered?
I think it's no one asked that because when it's a hard time, it's a hard time. You know, it wasn't easy emotionally. I'm a human. I have emotion. I have going through me. I mean, I don't know if I had emotion and up and down, but I wasn't suffering. If someone say I am suffering, I would ask first, what do you mean by suffering? But from my definition of suffering, I wasn't suffering.
What is
For
your
me, my definition of suffering, it's rejecting the situation as it is.
Yeah, I see that.
And if a part of my mind is rejecting something, this is not suffering. It's suffering when I want to go away of my thought and my mind. When I'm like,
I think a good yes, it's being fully present to what is without any resistance and refusal. I think a good testing is always if the moments there's too much, but revisiting a situation afterwards and seeing if there's anything left in the body of sensation, like imprints, even if the suffering, we don't need to use that word because I think that's coming from the self that suffering, the organism doesn't know about suffering because suffering is a sort of concept. So it's just a word to describe sensations and mental resistance. But if revisiting if there's a memory and revisiting and there's still sensations in the body, then there was clearly at that time, although it seemed that there wasn't anything that was because of being fully present, it seemed there wasn't anything. There might still be something, and that might be a trail, it might be a part of a trail of body sensations that are still present. Does that make sense?
oh yeah, I would say, I mean, when I talk about it, I can feel stuff in my body. I can feel like there is still, oh, I wanted something else, or this, or that. Oh, yeah, there is a story, there is feelings. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that I've cleaned up completely this event, but there is. I don't feel suffering. But like you, because it was about this world. But like you say, suffering, it's really a thought.
Yeah, it shouldn't be happening to me, sort of thought.
Yeah, shouldn't happening to me, or it shouldn't happen to someone else, and I shouldn't have done this, I should have done that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a quote I can't remember, but like
no,
pain.
I feel terrible because I did that. Okay, well, that's what you feel.
Yeah, pain is what to say? They say the body feels pain, or pain is happening, but suffering is optional because it's a repetitive going over,
yeah,
of revisiting a painful situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if this makes sense, Michael, because I don't know about this word of suffering is kind of arising a lot today, and I'm wondering what's all about this word today.
It's interesting. I don't know. I think we are somewhere on the border of semantics and conceptualism and sensations. Because like it depends how you look at it, right? Like for example, for me, from my experience, like what I shared earlier with the going out to find healthy food, and I was thinking, would I call that suffering or not? Well, it depends how you look at it, right? So if you look at it,
but you're in your
depends
head,
how-
Michael, you're in your head. So if you stop and say, does this feel like suffering? That's all you need to do to know whether you're suffering or not. You don't have
right
to.
now, I feel like anything. Right now, nothing
Yeah,
feels
yeah.
like.
No, you're obviously not suffering now, but when you're suffering, if you, we don't need to get into the semantics. You know, if you're suffering, you feel
Yeah,
bad,
I mean,
you feel a particular
I
kind
don't-
of bad.
yeah, I don't usually get too far. Usually what I do is I just look at, okay, there is something there, and then I sit and I do some practice and I work with that. I don't really focus too much on if there is suffering or not
No, yeah.
today, but it's interesting because the context is not that there is suffering. The context is that we were talking about liberation, about the end of suffering. So I'm thinking about it from that context.
Mm.
I don't know. I'd like to find out soon. I'll let you know then.
Yeah. You have to wait until next time you feel like you're suffering.
Yeah, exactly.
You might wait a long time, you know.
Well, I had quite a bit of suffering about a month and a half ago. I had an accident and was a lot of pain, a lot of things broken. I thought I might die, or I might have some really serious consequences. And I don't know, was it suffering or not? Like there was a lot of pain, there was all sorts of thoughts, there was all sorts of emotions. Like I was, I needed a nurse to come and help me get from the bed to the toilet because I was so weak. And I was still like, I was meditating, I was sitting, I was thinking, I was doing all sorts of practices, I was doing some energy work. But there were also thoughts that like, why did it happen? Why is it happening to me now? I don't want it. But at the same time, I was also like seeing them and doing some practices to work with them. So it's kind of, it's sort of mostly semantics. Like, do I define it as suffering or not?
Yeah. Okay. So the thing is, when you're having those stories that, why did it happen to me? Woe is me. That's suffering. Sure. You're going to be experiencing sensations that you could describe as unpleasant.
Yeah.
Because of those stories. But then you see that you're having them. You see the fact that you're having these thoughts and that they're likely to be causing suffering. What happens when you see them? They change, usually.
Yeah.
So so maybe you can say more accurately, you were starting to suffer, you saw that it was happening and it went away.
But then sort of when I think about it, well, it was a pretty extreme, like as extreme as it can get, a potential sort of situation that you might die very soon, very violently. So it was pretty extreme. But when I think about it, anything can be more extreme. There could be situations that are new in our lives that we are completely unprepared, that would cause suffering. So it's potentially unavoidable from that perspective. There is an endless of those situations that might arise in the future that we have or the condition before. So there is this potential for suffering in the future then.
In the future,
Maybe
there is a lot of suffering in the future. Let me tell
maybe
you.
the only solution is semantics, not call it suffering. Call it a different word.
No, we're not doing that. No, we're
Maybe.
not doing that. But
But-
true to say, all of the suffering is in the future.
Oh yeah. Keep thinking about the future, and you will see the suffering is coming very soon.
So Michael, this is an important issue. We're not playing with the meaning of words. We're trying our best to use words to describe experience. So when we start thinking about what words mean, we're getting away from what we're experiencing. So this is there's not a semantic issue about whether or not you call that suffering. Just go back to basics. If you're feeling an unpleasant sensation and you're experiencing stories about why it shouldn't be there, you're suffering. So what's the difference with David? He doesn't have those stories.
Right.
And you almost don't. They start, but then you see them happening. And when you see them happening, I'll bet you they stop or change at least.
Yeah, but I would say it still happens occasionally, very rarely in more serious cases, but still happens then. So in that case, if you were to define liberation, then maybe that would be the point that the stories no longer arise, that the suffering no longer arises.
Well, you're
Can I say
talking in
something?
absolutes again. You're talking about when suffering no longer arises. What about when it happens, but less and less frequently and less intensely? That's much more likely to be real than it never happening again.
Well, yeah, it's conceptual, but it's also practical. Just like David, I like to be very practical. So,
well, to be practical, if I can say, liberation is the opposite of suffering. So when you say, okay, suffering it's a concept, or it doesn't, but I want liberation. But there is no suffering and there is no liberation. There's just this moment. And you can't compare pain. You can't compare pain. It's impossible. I cannot say, oh yeah, last year this happened to me. Now this happened to me now, and last year was worse than now. This is thought. What is really happening is, what do you feel now in your body? What is the emotion? Because if you feel, if you feel sadness for something that happened years ago, you don't feel sadness for something that is happening a year ago. You feel sadness now, and it's always the same sadness. So every time your mind wants to compare, it's fine, but it's impossible to compare events, because you can compare between two events in your own life. Try, it's impossible, because the point of reference is always here and now, and it's always in your sensation, and it's always the emotion you feel now. And it's impossible to compare with other people, because you have no idea what they feel. If I tell you I am suffering, this means nothing to you, because you have no idea where is my standard of suffering. Maybe suffering for me is just feeling some tension in my back, and this is suffering for me, this is pain. But maybe pain for someone, it's having a bone broken. Otherwise, he feel no pain in his body. So you have no idea where is the other one. You have no reference. The only reference you have, it's your actual experience. Everything else, it's a story, and you are moving away. So this whole seeking liberation is suffering, because you want something that is not here, and if it's not here, where will you find it? So avoiding suffering and seeking liberation, it's the same. It leads nowhere. I mean, it leads here, because it will fail you.
Wait, what? Avoiding suffering and seeking liberation is the same?
Yeah, it's the same, because it will not work. So it will fail you, and when it will fail you enough, you will feel terrible. And at some point, I am tired to feel terrible, and you will start to feel this terribleness here, this awful emotion here, and it will be horrible, but you will feel that it's right. This is what I have to do because I have no choice. I try and I have no choice.
Yeah, that's how it is for me. But the mind still wants to know that whether or not there is a kind of, there is a what Angela called the end of this process. The what
End of what?
what
Yeah, but
what
I get
Christian
it. No,
suffering. I don't know.
who the end of suffering.
Yeah.
David,
Well, try, find out, and
I just
tell
want to
us
say
how
that.
it goes.
Apparently
What
motivated.
else?
I just want to say, David, that was really beautiful what you said. Really beautiful. Just yeah, just so much.
Yeah, me too. I want to put a big tick on your forehead. Good one.
No, the whole body is just sort of saying yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bit of a joke, but you could say that seeking liberation is suffering.
Yeah.
It's very easy to step out of this if we see that in seeking there is a feeling of time in it. There is a delay between what I want and where I am, and this delay is booking time in your experience, and this time put what you seek. It's time put object and what you seek in places that you can never go because you're always here.
Well,
And Eckhart Tolle talk a lot about this, and it's very clear what he says. It's, if it can be helpful, but it's just a fact.
Who you mentioned? Who?
Eckhart Tolle. He wrote a whole book of just about time, just about this. And it's very useful because seeking implies time, even if it's a concept. I'm aware that it points to a pursuit that's genuine. I mean, it's natural to see God and all of this. But I hope that you can understand that this context. I'm talking about seeking liberation. It's a bit different.
Okay, I understand what you mean, but I concur, because the way you describe it, there is only two ways. There is either finding liberation here now in the moment, or there is the seeking of liberation, of putting it somewhere in the future and then going after it and trying it. But for me, it's neither. For me, it's just, it's interesting. Let's see, let's find out. Maybe it is, maybe
yeah.
I don't have a fixation on either of them. I don't have a fixation on finding something in the future. It's more like, it's more like, are we going west or are we going east? Okay, let's go west. Like, we are going to this city. Okay, we are going to this city, but it doesn't mean that until we get to this city, there is nothing, there is no joy, there is no light, there is nothing to do. It's more like a direction. It's just a kind of signpost. Okay, does it exist? Does it not? We'll find out. To me, it's all about fixation. And there is endless layers of these subtle fixations. And this can be a fixation too, if you say that the liberation is in the moment, that it's all in the moment. That's also a fixation. Everything is.
I'm sorry, but it's not a fixation, it's just a fact.
How can it be a fact? There is no fact, there is nothing absolute. The only absolute is just reality, just this moment, just this. But beyond that,
I think for me, there is two facts, and I know there is no fact and everything, but to be very practical, there's two facts. The first, we can say that you are having an experience, whatever it is. There is something happening. It's just, there is something happening at whatever level you are. There is something happening.
Yeah.
And this is a fact. I mean, just look at it, and it's just, there is something happening. I don't know what it is, but there is something happening, and I'm present to it. And the second fact is like, whatever is happening, it's happening now. And this is two things that you can't deny, because you can't. It's impossible to experience the past, and it's impossible to do a step in the future. And for me, it's a fact. I don't know how the others feel about that, and if it make if for the others or you, it may make sense to you, Mikhail. But for me, I'm having an experience, and it's happening now. And I can say this with absolute certainty, because this is what I feel. After what it is, and all of this, it's what is the present, what is experience. Okay, this is, who knows, but there's an actual experience of this. I don't know how you feel.
I would agree. And if there was thoughts of saying, oh, you know, oh, I must do more of this because I'm going to get something, or I shouldn't have done that. I must do something else. That's immediately going back into the sort of seeking and suffering. But here there isn't anything. It's just what's happening. And there's no mental overlay about any identification. Well, depending on the pureness of what's happening, of what's being seen or interpreted, that can be naturally happening. But if there's no identification with it, it's only when identification comes in of getting somewhere or leaving somewhere else that's when the suffering arises. So I think, I mean, I totally get what you're saying. It's so simple.
Yeah, but look, if there is identification, it's an experience, right?
Yeah, it's what's
and this
happening.
experience is happening now. And if
Yeah.
suffering is arising, whatever suffering is, it's an experience. It's happening in your experience, and it's happening now. You cannot suffer in the future. So what you say, I agree. And this happened here, and it happened in your experience, and you are present to it.
Michael, you've heard my waking up story. Do you remember that?
I don't think so.
Well, I'll tell you very briefly, because it's really pertinent for what's going on here. And that is that after about 45 years of seeking, I was talking to a fellow about this, having a conversation a bit like this. And he said to me, he said, Vince, the mosquito bite of seeking will never heal while you keep scratching it. That was a real statement of the obvious, wasn't it? But it blew my mind, because I suddenly saw, I had an epiphany, and I suddenly saw that while ever I am a seeker, I cannot wake up, because seeking is always looking to the future, and waking up will only ever happen now. So something happened, and seeking dropped. Instantly, seeking dropped. I was so consumed with just being aware of what was present from that moment on. Now, I didn't do the dropping of seeking. It happened. just as it will happen for you at some point. But you've got to stop thinking about it. Every time you get into a thought loop, especially if that thought loop starts with the word but, you're avoiding. So somehow something needs to click for you.
Avoiding what?
Avoiding seeing that you are right where you need to be. It's not in the future. You cannot do it as a seeker. You have to flip into being awake, because you already are awake. You're just pretending you're not with all this other shit that goes on. Oh, that sounds a bit.
I had that moment
easy,
then also the seeking stopped. It was very sudden. Oh,
So,
sorry, my connection is kind of freezing. Yeah, I had that moment also then. Then the seeking stopped, and there was a lot of seeking and meditation, and then suddenly something shifted, and I dropped everything completely. I didn't want to meditate anymore. I didn't want to like listen to any more videos about spirituality. Nothing. Yeah, nothing. But then a lot of.
then doubt came up.
But you know, and it felt. But then a lot of suffering came up, like really deep, intense. You know, shadow. What is it called? Like dark night of the soul kind of suffering.
Well, that's a bloody good reason not to get back into it. I think you should drop this whole thing and don't look for enlightenment anymore.
And that sort of, and you know, that lasted for a few months, and then there was kind of a nice period, and then again, kind of like a dark period, and it sort of, you know, it happens like that.
Yeah.
So
that dark night of the soul stuff, that existential hole that you get yourself into, that's always about incomplete seeing. And you don't back out of that, you go forward through it. There's more to see. That's all that is.
Isn't that what like the 8th fetter is?
Oh, I don't know what fetter it is. No. We're back at fetter 2, I think. We're just talking about doubt.
Fetter 2, doubt?
Sometimes it's just hard to see, because when going deeper, at least my understanding from my experience, the experience here is that there are layers. And I've been working with Pernilla's Fetter 5, and I told you last week, how a small issue of a difference of opinion, I had so much story and loaded of something that I hadn't seen before. And so, but because there's now an understanding and an opening to going deeper, it's like more arises, but sometimes we're taken by surprise, even going through something, and then all of a sudden it comes again. And like Vincent's saying, it's, yeah, the seeing, there's always more opportunity to see it, but from a place of curiosity and allowing it to show me, sort of the trail. Because I also had quite a lot of dark night experiences before my body, actually, because I was a stick on a head type of person for most of my life. And so I really had armoring against body sensations. I really couldn't feel very much. And it took a sort of time to sort of feel the cellular structure opening up to that. And so when things came, they came so intensely, and was taken so, yeah, with so much like the feeling of suffering, because I didn't have there wasn't an understanding of this mechanism here of how to work with it. And it's like in the feeling, not in the suffering, the loop and the this and this and this, which was going around. It's like, oh no, just okay, go in. But
dive into those sensations. Yeah.
didn't have the preparedness of the body, and didn't have, you know, even the knowing of how to, or suggestion of how to deal with that.
So that dark night that you experienced a couple of times there, Michael, that pretty painful, fair bit of suffering in that.
Yeah, it's like depression. Like I had a lot of depression in life, but it's not the same because like I'm different, because my relation to it is different. So it doesn't register as depression, but it's very much reminiscent of it. And it's kind of there was no, you know, no desire to do much, no sort of, it's a kind of existential void type of thing.
Yes, yes, yeah, I
And
understand.
it comes and goes, yeah, like this deep existential void, like nothing.
Yep.
No meaning in anything, no point, no purpose, no
Pretty nihilistic.
nothing. What?
Nihilism.
Kind of, yeah. It's not. It's not. Nihilism is sort of a bit more conceptual. For me, it was more, you know, experiential.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a sort of deep void of emptiness of life and everything, and it's unpleasant.
Yes, yes.
And
Okay.
it comes and
So,
goes.
would you imagine? Could you imagine having to go through that again to get where you want to go? Would you do it?
Yeah, sure. That's,
You had to
you
go
know,
through
it
that
is what
again
it
to
is.
get there. Would you do it?
Well, yeah, it is what it is. What else is there to do?
Good one. Yeah.
But
Can I,
it's motivating me to seek, you know, how to overcome it, how to get rid of it. So that's my motivation.
Okay. So next question is, if you say yes, you would go through it again to get where you want, then you're pretty motivated. If you didn't go through it again, would you take that as a sign that you weren't there?
I wasn't fair. What? I lost that one.
Or we'll put it another way. Do you think you have to go through that again to get where you want to go?
I'm not sure. I feel like I've had the worst of it, and now it's sort of subtler and subtler levels.
Yeah,
But
right,
I don't
right,
know.
right.
I never know.
That's a big one. That's a big
Because
one. You feel like you've changed as
I
a
thought-
result of it. Yeah.
I thought so too before many times, and I've been wrong. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I will see.
Well,
We'll see.
all through this is the lesson that you don't know anything.
Michael, I'm trying my hand at asking a question. So this now of this feeling of emptiness, how does it feel? How does it in the sensations in the body? If you let go the word emptiness.
It is. There is sort of layers of it. There is a layer of a kind of contraction and fear and worry and unworthiness. But that's a feeling. That's an emotion. That's I know that
Contraction
one.
is not so much of an emotion. Can you go into the contraction? Where in the body are you feeling the contraction?
Yeah, it's in the eyes and the neck, and as I go in, it usually dissolves. But then what is more concerning is that there is kind of nothing. Like there is clarity, there is sort of purity, but there is sort of nothing. There is no inclination to do anything, to go anywhere. It's like,
But that's already, now you're in thought of inclinations. We're working just with sensation, which appears at the moment around the eyes. And you also did mention some fear. Where are those sensations of fear being felt?
okay,
That you
I
would
like
come to
this.
the conclusion that you were feeling fear.
Well, right now, there is well, there is just tiredness. I don't find fear right now.
How does tiredness feel? And where in the body do you feel tiredness?
In my head, at the top of my head, the back of my head, in the shoulders, the neck.
Can you get closer into,
sense.
can you get closer into the sensations? Like, so that you're so close into them sensations,
Yeah,
indirect experience, that you don't need to explain where they are. They're just there, and you get closer and closer into them.
yeah.
Can you describe what's happening?
There's a lot of sensations in the body, hands, the arms, shoulders and neck, the head. There is a kind of sense of heat, a sense of energy kind of moving.
Could that be described as emptiness? Or does it need to have a label? Do those sensations need to describe anything?
It feels uncomfortable. There is a kind of sense that it's uncomfortable. It's unpleasant. No, it's not emptiness.
Can sensations speak? Or is it Michael who's speaking?
Maybe they can.
Can you get deeper into the sensations and follow the movement, that they're never the same, they're never just static, that there's always movement?
Yeah. They are. They have partially dissolved, but they're still there.
Can you be in the body and allow those sensations to be there?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's
it
happening now?
shifted. It shifted a bit. There was a kind of wave of heat, of resistance. It's still like there's still a kind of like I'm physically sweating a bit. I'm feeling warmer. There are still some sensations present, and there is still a kind of discomfort with them, a sense that they are uncomfortable, but it's less strong, I guess. There is just a it's like a general resistance to sensations, maybe.
A good technique for you, Michael, is to watch what your eyes are doing. And every time you look up, you know you're in your head thinking, and you need to come back into your sensations. That's just a really good technique to use.
Okay.
I would imagine that a lot of the time you were looking at sensations there, you were actually lost in thought.
When I was doing my little delving in last night, it was so interesting how sometimes I was able to get almost it was like there was no distance between anything. It was just the sensation and the movement, and then all of a sudden there was, you know, there was the distraction happened. And then there was moving into a thought or something. And then it's like, oh, let's go back, and just seeing how it's a natural, I think it's a natural system of the body to, in a way, distract itself. If it's like getting to a new layer and having to take a breath back. And so it's like, okay, what's this? Got to go back into the head, and like, oh, okay, all right, now we can go back. And so we move forward and backwards and forwards and backwards in a very sort of flowing way. Of avoidance, and little by little sort of contacting, allowing the body to say, it's okay, you're safe, it can be seen, can be felt, but it's new. And so,
well, that's interesting. What came, and Barry, thanks. That was really helpful. Thanks, Rowena and Vince and David. What came was that maybe it's just maybe it's all a sensation. Maybe it's a judgment that I've had for a long time that sort of something is missing, that there is suffering. So that maybe that perception that there is suffering is just a sensation. So I will explore that more. That's possible.
It's just an interpretation of a sensation.
Yeah.
I want to add something, because what's Rowena, I think it's very, very important to emphasize and to really understand in an experiential way, is that the avoidance, going to thought, it's a defense mechanism for survival. So it's very important to recognize its usefulness, and to be aware that is not an enemy. This mechanism, it's a friend. It's just that it's misused, and now it take everything as a threat. So this is what Rowena said. I just say it differently. But what I want to emphasize, it's also we have to be careful, because with this non-dual story that we are telling us now, we want to suppress all of the thoughts, which is good, right? But all of the thoughts, all the mechanisms of the thoughts are defenses. So if I put everything out at one time, which is great, I mean, why not? You know, it happened to me and a lot of people, it's fine. But all of the emotion that this mechanism was handling will come up. And this is the up and down that a lot of people are talking about, which is natural, but we don't have to do it all in one way. So I just want to emphasize that this to stop, that this mechanism, it's a friend. It's just misused now, but it's very useful at some time. sometimes very useful. If a lion attack me, I want to dissociate maybe because the pain's too much maybe. So there is moment where it's very important to have this mechanism and to be aware that there is a lot of emotion below this, and not to be surprised that when I go in a very high state of no thought, after I'm just with a lot of emotion back. So just because this is how the mind works, and to be aware of that can be helpful because we can know, okay, now this is emotion that this thought was kind of hiding, and now I have to deal with this, and this is how the flow that Rowena was talking about. And I think there is not enough talk about this emotion work. Like everyone, end of days, liberation, happiness for everyone, forever, and no one talk about emotional work. I mean, not everyone, but it's not really emphasis that much, you know. And I think it's very important. I just wanted to name it. I feel it is important.
I don't know. It does not. Yeah, thank you. It doesn't register as emotions. Maybe it isn't just because right now what I'm seeing is just sensations, but then there is also kind of sort of judgments of them, and there is a kind of like a minor fight or flight response coming up because this triggers something stronger. But I don't see any stories. I don't see any kind of thoughts or stories throughout this.
But if this
Maybe I just don't notice them. Maybe they're not there. Maybe they're subtle.
Michael, you mentioned that there was some judgment of the sensations. And so the word judgment is already an overlay of identification. So you can look into the sensation that implies this judgment, because that also is a sensation that can be seen. There's these layers of some are just sensations that at this time can't really be named because it's a new ground that you're starting to become an archaeologist with, and then there's others that are, you know, there's some statements about this that are making themselves known, like judgment, and so it's multi-layered and a lot of ground to explore.
Yeah.
How does judgment feel in your body?
It's hot. Like I feel it's hot. My body is hot. I'm sweating. My head is hot, is warm, uncomfortable. Feels uncomfortable. Like I want to go have a shower, rest, relax. I want to escape, leave the situation.
Can you just be with, rather than going into the mind like I want to go and have a shower and can you just be with that heat in your body and welcome it?
Yeah, sure. Well, welcome. Yeah, I could try.
Just be with it. If
Yeah,
welcoming it is a bit too much.
Yeah, it's moderate.
Like almost sort of, inviting, depending on how you're sensing it, inviting it yourself to be closer to it without a name of it even being heat. And if thoughts arise, just say, oh, okay, thank you. And then just saying, oh, now I'm going to go back into the sensation.
I would just add something, because sometimes if sensation it's too much, it's too uncomfortable, the only way we have learned is to go into thought. But you can stay in sensation if you search a sensation that is pleasant or just neutral, you know, and you cannot then, and So you can go away of the uncomfortable sensation, but you stay in sensation by going to another which is pleasant or at least neutral. And you can start to dance between the both of them. This allows you to stay in sensation, but not always in comfortable sensation. So the impulse to go away in thoughts or to dissociate will be less present. And like this, it can be maybe you are training to be more sensitive and augmenting your capacity to handle uncomfortable sensation. Switching between something uncomfortable and something comfortable. Uncomfortable, you stay in comfortable, and when it's too much, you switch to sensation, but comfortable sensation. And after it, we switch back again to uncomfortable, and this is just happening naturally. Because
yeah, that's a really good point, David. And it can be even like feeling sitting on the chair and your feet on the ground, and more normal, the sensations of body sensations of becoming present and those type of sensations, and then seeing, oh, and what's inside me, that's a sensation too, and it's all part of the sensate field.
Yeah. Yeah, because what happen often with if I can talk about the nervous system, but often there is a window of presence, and when we are a baby and a lot of stuff happen, we go into freeze, right? We dissociate, and we can dissociate going up or going down this window, right? And often we collapse. A lot of you go up, and after you collapse into freezing. So what happens is you feel nothing. So it's like there's nothing. It's just very slow. But just behind this, there is a lot of energy coming just behind. So, but for the energy to come up, your presence or your nervous system, depend how you want to have to come up in your window of presence enough, so this other energy, which is emotion, can come up in your presence. And often we are so traumatized that our window of presence is very for sensation is very slow. It's very narrow. So I can just do 1 minute and it's uncomfortable and I go eat something. So that's why it's very useful to really switch between something in a sensation that is positive or at least neutral, like you say feet or I don't know, somewhere, and you start to switch between them. And this will allow your window of presence to come more wide, and you can dance more in it. This is just from a nerve system kind of talking toward sensation. It can be useful to perceive that way, that you are never going back. It's just if you feel terrible at some point, it's good. That means that your window of presence is more wide and there is stuff coming up in it. So the more terrible you feel, the better you are. The darkness is the light, my friend. There is no way out of this.
That's so interesting what
Really
you just told us, David. I hadn't heard that, that I didn't have that understanding about how the nervous system works, as a baby. And I was aware of that from a slightly different perspective, but not in that detail. Really interesting.
And it was a great technique. I love it. Yeah, I think it's really good. That's something I hadn't thought of before. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, look, I'm going to pull the plug. We're just hitting 3.5 hours now, so that's
Wow. Okay.
nonsense. Yeah. David, I don't have your email address on my list. Do you want to be notified when we have these meetings, or you'll?
I am on your list. I
okay, good.
received the notification. So
Yeah, good. All right. I didn't see it. That's all. I didn't remember it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope to see you again. You're a great asset. We love you. And have you done any guiding? You've been helping some people.
No one asked for it.
I think you'd be a great guide. I think we need to get you into guiding. Yeah. Yeah. There are a lot of people out there
Okay.
wanting what you've got. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, if people ask me, I can find time.
Mm-hmm. All right. We'll talk about it some more then, eh?
Okay.
Yeah, good.
It was a great pleasure to see you. I didn't hear a lot about Shaheen. I guess it was your choice, right? That's why I didn't ask you stuff, but maybe next time.
Yes, I would love to talk next time, because I think I'm currently at the phase where my identity is being questioned to the point where I still can't help myself, put myself in front of Vince and everybody, but at the same time, I'm staying quiet so that I can still protect it.
Right.
So I'm on the edge. I'm on the edge.
Right on the
Perfect.
edge of that cliff, about to
great.
fall over. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I don't know who's going to do that little. It's just like a breath, like a little breath on my back, and I'll flip over.
Nice.
Good one. Yeah.
I hope I won't hang in there.
Excellent. All right. It's been great. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Really
Thanks,
precious.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.